This is Lysha Holmes of Key Recruitment, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by a guest that some of you might be familiar with from earlier on in the summer. This is Caroline Oberman, who's Regional Director for Linear Recruitment. Good morning to you, Caroline. How are you?
Morning, Lisa. I'm really good. And as you can see, I'm back in the office today.
I was going to say those mirrors, for those who are watching this on YouTube rather than listening on the podcast, very impressive backdrop. It's nice to see you back in the office. How's that been, getting back into the office?
It's actually been really good. We're not back in full time. We're doing a little bit of a flexible working arrangement from home in the office. We asked our staff what they wanted to do as well, so that people could have an input, because we don't want people to do something they're not comfortable with, and everybody wanted a little bit of face-to-face time with each other. So yeah, it's been really good, I think, from a morale and a mental health point of view, to have people back in the office for a little bit.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, actually, because, since the changes at the end of September, where, the encouragement was to, if you can work from home, it's interesting because recruitment has obviously had 6 months of, having to adapt, but actually from a productivity perspective, but most importantly from a mental health perspective, I think most recruiters feel that they need a connection, even if it is just 1 or 2 days a week. So it's
I agree. And to be honest, the productivity wasn't an issue with people working from home. Our productivity was still equal to what it would be in the office, but it was more for that social connection for people and to feel part of a team.
Yeah, I think it's energy, isn't it? It's energy, it's ideas, it's support, it's physical connection. Human beings need that, and especially salespeople, I think.
Yeah, especially people in recruitment.
I think so, definitely. So it was really nice to see that, and that's from my point of view really encouraging for other people listening and watching to this. So since we last spoke, I think we were right in the smack of lockdown when we last caught up. What's actually been happening in the property and construction sector, which of course is your industry?
So I think that we've been really, really fortunate. I say to people all the time, I feel really privileged to work in this sector because we've come out of COVID really, really strong. We've been really, really busy. I mean, at some points, I think during August and September, we've been probably too busy to manage with what we have. Although after being shut down for a couple of months, I promised to never ever complain about being busy ever again. And lots of stuff that we've been saying to our clients is just thank you for your business and appreciate you still working with us during this time. But all of the sites are back up and running. Sites have tried to catch up the work that they missed. Even though some of them weren't locked down, they've had minimal people on site. Sites that used to having 60, 70 guys on sites went down to 10, 12 people on site. So their need for agency support has been huge over the last couple of months. So we've actually been really, really busy. The other surprising thing for us was we've had permanent recruitment going on as well, which we didn't really forecast. Going back to the last recession, people didn't really want to hire permanent, but in the last couple of months, we've had a good number of permanent people hired. Some of them remotely as well, interviews on Teams, Zoom, things like that. So it's really been positive for the property and construction industry.
It certainly sounds like it, and certainly from a perm, like you say, that there are definite similarities to the last recession, but there are stark differences. And I think if your sector has embraced that people can work from home, then if they need a key hire, so is that what you're seeing?
It surprised me, Lysha, because we work with a lot of construction companies that perhaps to some other sectors might feel are a little bit old-fashioned or a little bit stuck in the ways. I mean, they're certainly not operated as some of these, tech companies, but they have really embraced it and found a way to work around this to keep the companies going. And it's been fantastic to work with.
Yeah, that's really good, and obviously you can then look at their best practice and see how you can implement it, and everybody can learn from each other. So as a business and as a regional director with obviously lots of people in your team, what strategies have you put in place to safeguard your business and then to potentially look at areas where you can grow revenue? And I mean, you've mentioned perm there, so what have you been doing?
Yeah, I mean, we right at the beginning we did some work on looking at what sectors would come out of the lockdown strongest. And obviously there was going to be, some areas that weren't as strong. But housing has been a really, really great area. They've obviously still wanted to reach their targets, and the property market itself for selling and buying houses has been very, very busy. So that's an area of our business we've concentrated on a lot. as a business, we do normally do a lot of work within student accommodation, and that actually all went ahead to be handed over in the last couple of weeks, for the students all coming back, which has happened, you know, all on time, which at some point during the during the lockdown, we didn't think that was going to be an area, you know, but perhaps that might be delayed by 12 months, but no, that's been really, really busy as well. And then sort of going forward, we are looking more at, you know, manufacturing companies that might be building warehouses or logistics, education, healthcare, those sort of businesses. Focus on, you know, providing more sort of contractors on that basis as well.
Yeah, definitely. So anybody that's associated with manufacturing for the vaccine or PPE or the logistics of that, that's just going to be a massive sector in itself.
It's going to be crazy. It's just going to be crazy. And to be honest with you, we are still suffering with a skills shortage in construction. That shortage hasn't gone away, you know. So there is still quite a need for good quality skilled people from a trades level right up to a managerial or director level. So, you know, I think the work, as long as the sites keep going, will continue to be there.
That leads very nicely to something we were talking about before we started recording, which is the sort of more social responsibility side of some of what your clients are doing in the community, and looking at training workshops and so on. So how can people get involved who are maybe they're aware of maybe a young person that's gone and done a qualification and it's not going to there's not going to be a job at the end of it? What can you advise and what can you do to get connected to those sorts of things?
Like we were saying before, actually, we're working, so one of our large clients are putting on a training facility in Partington, in conjunction with the CITB. So primarily it'll be for people to gain qualifications in CSCS and things like that. But they've asked their suppliers, and we're going to get involved in doing additional training for people. So CV writing, interview prep, social media, how you can get yourself out on there. There is still a massive shortage in construction. I was having, interestingly enough, I was talking to a site manager from one of our clients about it yesterday, and how it probably does need to be a little bit more pushed in education in schools. He was saying to me, actually, when he was at school and the careers advisors came in, they sort of said, right, well, if you go and work in HR, you can be a HR director and you can earn £60,000 a year. If you go and work in construction, you can earn £30,000 a year. And oh, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. You know, you can probably earn £30,000 as a startup in construction. You know, we have trainee and assistant site managers on 25 grand plus a package. If you work your way up in construction, you can easily still earn that sort of money. So I think maybe the information that's getting passed on to people at that, you know, entry level in you know, when you think of, do I want to go to university? Do I want to do an apprenticeship? They aren't always getting the best information. There's obviously also been a huge drop in apprenticeships because of COVID. I know that the government has now put sort of an incentive scheme in for people to take apprenticeships, but you know, we do need more companies in construction to start giving people that opportunity in, or 20, 30 years time, if we've got a skills shortage now, it's going to be horrific.
Yeah, it's going to be really terrible, isn't it? And there is I mean, it's a totally different topic, isn't it? But it's related to what you're talking about. There is a disconnect in the education system to what the actual reality is, which is why 100%. Sort of plug-in of what you're doing with your client in Partington is absolutely essential. And I'm really passionate about this, being a parent of teenagers. You know, that it's a little bit draconian. You know, you could become a teacher, you could become a doctor. What about becoming a developer? What about becoming, you know, working in construction? These are fantastic.
Well, I know when I was at school, no one said to me, Caroline, have you thought about being a quantity surveyor? Have you thought about being a planner? I mean, there were just never things that were sort of put forward, and it's such a terrible shame. And obviously women in construction as well, another area I'm really passionate about. Just don't think it's pushed enough. You know, women have some really, really great skills that are, you know, so useful on site, and organisational skills and project management skills. But again, you know, it just isn't pushed in schools and education enough, I don't think.
So actually, if anyone's watching or listening to this that's got, you know, a relative, or it's you watching or listening this and you're a young, you know, female, what would your advice be, Caroline, in terms of elevating yourself and making yourself attractive to going into the construction market?
I think it's just about sort of getting yourself out there, really, making some good connections. I mean, you know, if anybody wants to get into the construction industry, there are a multitude of qualifications that you can do via an apprenticeship or via, you know, a university course, you know, or if you've just come out of school or you've just come out of college and you're 18 and you're wanting to get some experience, you can go and get yourself a CSCS card and just try and get your foot on the door on, you know, on site with somebody, because a lot of people, that's what happens. A lot of it is by chance. You get your foot in the door, you start working really, really hard, you get noticed by people, and they then start to invest in you as well. So, you know, there's lots of routes out there. And, you know, if anybody does want to have a chat with me and give me a call, you know, or get some advice or an introduction to any clients, then I'm more than happy to have a chat with people too.
Right, and anybody that is watching or listening to this, start following Caroline on LinkedIn, because you are a huge ambassador for, you know, women in construction generally, but you're very well connected on networking, because that's one thing that you've recently started doing. You've done a lot more virtual networking. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, your Thursday 11 o'clock slot?
Yeah, so I mean, prior to lockdown, the only sort of networking I'd done had been like going to like Chamber of Commerce or going to an industry specific event. But obviously, you know, in lockdown I couldn't leave the house, so I found some more online things, and there were a couple that I joined that have all been actually really, really good, and I've met some really, really great connections, and actually got some business from it as well. Actually, actually started working with some really good people. But the one I sort of continued on with is called BITTER, which is the British and Irish Trading Alliance, and they have different chapters, and the Thursday at 11 o'clock is the Liverpool chapter. There's a Friday at 4 o'clock Manchester chapter as well. But it's probably a bit different from your normal networking, so people don't do a bit of a salesy spiel each week and sell their wares. It's actually about genuinely getting to know people, understanding them as people, understanding their business, so that when you are recommending a business to somebody else, you can do it fully knowing, yeah, that I'm talking about. But it's been really good, because I'm sure other people feel this way, but when you are maybe in a senior managerial role or a director role in a business, it can be a little bit lonely. You know, you haven't got your peers around you every day, or, you know, that sort of team feel. And it's been really nice to meet other people in the same sort of role. And make some great friendships as well as business relationships.
I think one benefit, I've done an awful lot of networking since lockdown, and like you know, I'm very confident in my ability. I put myself out there, but imposter syndrome every now and again, you know, flares up. And I think that's what's brilliant about having a peer group of people that you can be open and honest with.
Oh, 100%. I went to one once. I went to a client meeting one Thursday that really hadn't gone how I expected it to go, and I was in a terrible mood, and I was late, and I'd rushed home to log on and go on this call. And I said to everybody, I'm just really not feeling myself today. I've been in this meeting, and this has happened, and this, that, and the other. And it was a lot to do with reduction of fees, and everybody really made me feel, you don't need to reduce your fees, Caroline. Why are you even having these thoughts in your head? It really made me sort of get my mind back together. And I was so appreciative of that, you know, and without that, I would have probably just gone home and, you know, shouted at my dogs or something.
Oh, you'd never shout at your dog. You could never.
Oh, I did that. That's true.
Getting for a very long walk. And I do think, and actually anybody that is listening or watching that hasn't yet joined a networking community within whatever your industry is, even if it's around with people that aren't necessarily doing what you do, but a peer group, I'm a huge advocate. And I know myself, I've also benefited financially. I've earned revenue from people that wouldn't have known 6 months ago, but just from an emotional support. It's a safe place, and you create such amazing friendships. I care about these people now. I want to help them, and I think that's the most wonderful thing that's come out of this whole COVID situation. So, I mean, I know you've got beautiful glassware all around you, all these mirrors, but I don't know if you've got a crystal ball there, Caroline. But can you? If only you did, but can you give me some sense of what you think is going to happen, certainly as we sort of head into the next 6 months before, you know, Bojo maybe throws another bomb under us, but what would your reflection so far, and then what you think might happen going forward?
Gosh, that's a really difficult question, isn't it? I mean, in terms of our business, one of the areas that's been hit hardest from the changes is our temporary business for managerial staff, and we were talking a bit about that before we came on, weren't we? And I'm hoping that next year that's going to be an area that's going to take off again for us. My opinion, it's just my opinion, not fact, but my opinion is that, you know, sort of this year with furlough and then people coming back from furlough and perhaps not taking their holidays this year and rolling them over to next year hasn't given us that usual spike in holiday cover for our temporary business and things like that. But next year, with everyone having, you know, rolling over their holidays and things like that, we will get more of those clients needing that short-term cover. So I think that's going to be a good growth area for our business. I mean, as long as everybody, you know, sort of follows the rules that we're meant to be doing now, and, you know, we can get through these next 6 months, which, you know, I'm absolutely certain that we can. You know, March, April next year, things should start getting a little bit back to normal. I was.
That looks like you are a perpetually positive person, and that's why we absolutely.
You can only be positive, can't you, Lysha?
Yeah. Well, exactly. So, what do you do personally to stay positive? Give us a few of your tips that's kept.
So, I think probably, God, a couple of years ago, I just literally decided to myself that I was no longer going to worry about anything that I didn't have control of, because there is no point. So, there's no point worrying about what Boris Johnson is or isn't going to tell us to do. There's no point worrying about what may or may not happen in the next couple of months, because I can't affect that. The only thing I can affect is my own self and how I deal with that. So I think that's probably the thing that's kept me the most positive. And, you know, I've always been a big advocate of people, you know, getting outside, lots of fresh air, lots of walks, lots of exercise, get yourself a dog. Definitely.
Get yourself a dog. I know we talked off air about the animal sanctuary near me. Are you connected to any animal charities at all? And if so, we'll signpost people to it.
Oh, 100%. So one of my dogs came from a rescue called Healing Paws, which is an unbelievable charity. So Healing Paws is a lady called Sue, and she's based in Zakynthos. So when she went to Zakynthos, she never went there to rescue dogs. She went there to be with her daughter to set up a holistic therapy and Reiki business.
Oh, wow!
She relocated herself off to Zakynthos to do this business, but in Zakynthos, they treat dogs especially badly.
Oh,
so
no.
them into the wilderness. She rescues them from down drain pipes. They just throw them into the drainage system. They leave them on the side of roads. And she literally thought to herself, I can't live here and watch this happen. So she set up a UK-based charity where she will, you know, if anybody in Zakynthos finds a stray dog, or she will get a phone call saying, you know, I can hear, you know, crying down a drain pipe, I can hear it in the woods. Can you come and try and rescue these dogs? And she will take them to a shelter. And then people from the UK or other parts of the world can adopt these dogs. And they do, pre-COVID, it was 4 trips a year. No, actually, no, two trips a month. It's now 4 trips a year, but it was 2 trips a month. And they basically drive them from Zakynthos in the back of a disused ambulance over to the UK. So they sort of go on a ferry across to mainland Greece, drive through Europe, across the Channel. They have a passport, but, you know, you then, you know, I picked up Hudson from a service station. I think it was Keel Services. We stood there and waited. This 4-day trip in the back of this ambulance, but they're doing such a good job. You know, the people who are adopting, you have to, you know, be fully checked out. You get somebody come to your house, make sure your house is safe, and then they make sure that the dog that you want is right for you as well, because they want to give those dogs the best possible chance of succeeding in their new home. And you even have to sign a contract to say that if you ever decided that you were going to give that dog up, you can't, you have to give it back to the charity. So this dog,
you can't pass it on to your friend or something. Oh, that's amazing. Do you know, it's really funny, like Scooby's sent something. Scooby's just jumped down from sleep and is looking for something. God, Karen, what an amazing charity. We'll definitely.
They are fantastic. Healing Paws, they're called Healing Paws.
Oh no, we'll attach it to that. I'll make sure Shannon's on the case with that. Oh, it's been so delightful as always, and you always make me smile. You're such a refreshing set of eyes in the industry, and I think, you know, that property and recruitment have always gone hand in hand together. They're a very strong barometer of what's actually happening in the economy. And, you know, coming away from this conversation, I'm hoping most people listening to this will feel more positive about, you know, what they can do. And I'm with you. I say this all the time. You can only affect your own microcosm. You can't worry about what's happening. You only can control what you can control. It's serenity. So thank you for joining us today, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Lovely to see you, Lysha.
You too.